Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Financial Issues today. It is wonderful to be here with you this morning. It is a week before Christmas Eve, December 17th, 2024, and I'm happy to be with you today. Seth Udinsky here with you this morning, live for Financial Issues. We got the Studio A team here, of course, Sam Case, Grant Ace, and Darlene Columban on the phones. Great to be here with you all today. Thank you for joining us. Hey, please make sure you act on Friday's sell alert, TE68. Make sure that you sell that stock. We issued an alert on Friday, so if you missed it, go ahead and do that now. Today's show, we'll be looking at the markets, of course, the latest economic updates. We'll be preparing for tomorrow's Fed announcement. We'll see what the Federal Reserve will do tomorrow. There's really no telling until they do it. It's looking like they'll probably cut interest rates once again. So we'll keep an eye on that, of course. Also, we got part 2 of our 2-part retirement series that we've been going on here. We started that yesterday. We'll discuss some of the ways to just make the most of your retirement once you're there. So yesterday was more about preparing for it. Today, more about making the most of it. Also, later in the show, a couple friends from Crossroads Kids Club will be joining me, kind of pulling back the curtain on the backstory and foundation of our newest ministry sponsor. Folks, I hope this can be a blessing for you. We never want to present you a ministry sponsor and not tell you about them. So we've had Crossroads on several times, but I'm really excited for this interview because this will kind of give the backstory of who this ministry is. You all know much of the backstory of Timothy Plan, for example, and Preborn. Crossroads obviously is a new friend of ours, so we'd love to be able to show all of you how this ministry started and kind of where they're going and different things like that. So I'm very excited to have some guests from Crossroads on with me to share some of that. Also, Sam Case will join me to examine some of the latest financial news headlines, including an interesting one, which we'll get to later in the show. There's a trend going on right now among Gen Z parents. So if you're between the ages of 45 and 60, this might be for you. It'll be good stuff. We'll get to that later in the show. Before we get to all of that, though, folks, I wanted to just open our show sharing, unfortunately, some terrible news that we got yesterday out of, I believe it's the state of Wisconsin, Madison's Abundant Life Christian School. There was a school shooting that took place there yesterday. The latest updates I'm seeing are that 2 are dead and several more are seriously injured, some in critical condition. The shooter was a 15-year-old girl. The shooter did take her own life as well, I'm seeing. So just terrible devastation here in a Christian community. So I would urge all of you, please pray for this community today. Pray for the families of these victims, the mothers and fathers who their lives are shaken. I do believe one of the folks who sadly was killed was a student and the other one was a teacher. So just horrible to see this. Pray that the Lord would show himself especially near to them. I'm getting similar feelings of back when we heard about the Covenant School shooting back last year. Just terrible devastation there. So pray that God would be near to them and that the gospel would go forth in the midst of this. Just horrible stuff. So there's not really much more you can say about it other than pray. Well, let's turn to the scriptures here, folks. Proverbs 29:17 as we open our show. And as we're reading this, keep in mind of that headline we'll talk about later today about Gen Z parents and some financial things they're doing with their children. The verse says this: correct your son and he will give you rest. Yes, he will give delight to your soul. That verse is true, by the way. If you discipline your children, it's a principle that the chances of you being able to enjoy a good relationship with them in a restful way is better than if you don't discipline them. This verse speaks to one of the most important aspects of stewardship in our lives, which is the stewardship of our families. Now, depending on your age or your stage, a loving discipline, a loving correct might look different. I am in my 30s. I have a 4-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old son, and another son on the way. My discipline is going to look drastically different than if you, say, are 65 and you've got grown children who are out of the house. Maybe they're now having children, but you're still called to provide that loving rebuke for them when the time comes. How do you do it? It's going to look different than me disciplining Josiah, for example. Just the way it goes. Rebuke is never fun, folks. It's never fun for the one receiving it or the one giving it. I found oftentimes giving rebuke is far more tough than receiving it, especially when it's your children, because you love your children. You want the best. You have to remember this, folks. You correct and discipline your children because you love them. It's not outside of your love of them. It's actually because you love them. The scripture tells us that a loving father is the one who disciplines his children. That disciplines those he loves. When we are disciplined by God, it's a reminder that he loves us. A parent doesn't usually discipline someone who is not their child. But the fact that you're getting disciplined means that the person who is doing the disciplining, if it's done in a loving way, of course, loves you deeply. And so we correct them because we love them, because we want what's best for them, because we want them to stay on the good, right path that God has laid out for them. So folks, be a good steward of your offspring. Discipline them well, whether they're 3 or whether they're in their 30s. And look, again, you're not going to spank your 30-something-year-old son if he does something silly. But you might have a heart-to-heart conversation with him if you're an older parent in your 60s or 70s. You might sit him down and say, listen, son, I've been through this, okay? I know what I'm talking about here. You need to change what you're doing. It's going to look a little different. But do that. Be a good steward of your offspring. Discipline them well as God has done for you. Well, let's turn to the markets here now, folks. So yesterday, the markets were for the most part feeling kind of positive as investors awaited Wednesday's Fed meeting once again. So by midday, tech-heavy NASDAQ leading the way well above that full percentage point. The S&P 500 was also enjoying some gains. That's basically how they finished. Late afternoon, they were the same. Monday's closing bell, the Dow Jones was the lone loser. It was down 0.25%. The S&P 500 had a relatively good day, up about 0.2%. The NASDAQ was rocking and rolling, cooking with gas, up around 1.25 percentage points. So a great finish for the markets there. Pre-markets this morning, however, are a little bit down. The Dow futures trending downward about 0.4%. The S&P 500 is trending down about 1/3, and the NASDAQ is trending down about 1/4. That's what they're looking like pricing in here. There's a couple things that are happening right now that could be making the markets a little bit skittish. One, of course, is the upcoming Fed meeting. Even though everybody's really confident that the Fed's still going to cut rates, you just never know, and that always makes the markets a little bit skittish. But also, NVIDIA has been falling back into correction territory, interestingly enough, down more than 10% from its record close. So they fell in pre-market trading on Tuesday. Despite NVIDIA's recent fall, though, the stock is still up more than 160% for the year. So even though it's entering correction territory, if you're looking at it even slightly long-term, it's doing great. So interesting stuff there. Let's switch gears now to some interesting news regarding big tech's possible swap of allegiance. I'm very fascinated about this, studying this intersection of finance and politics. Sam, let's start here with this headline that we saw from SoftBank. What can you tell us about this and what the Trump administration might be planning?
Yeah, so this is some very good news for the United States, and also just proof that Trump's agenda appears to be working, amazingly enough, before he even takes office, as Donald Trump and SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son, what a very fun name to say. It's a Japanese company. They announced on Monday a $100 billion investment in the U.S. with the hope of creating 100,000 new jobs. SoftBank CEO said his confidence level in the U.S. economy has tremendously increased with Trump's victory, and that's a sentiment that Trump himself also shared. So here's Donald Trump.
This historic investment is a monumental demonstration of confidence in America's future, and it will help ensure that artificial intelligence, emerging technologies, and other industries of tomorrow are built, created, and grown right here in the USA. One of the beautiful things about Masa is he's very much involved with emerging technology, probably knows it maybe better than almost anybody. So it's a great honor.
Now, it should be noted, Seth, that following Trump's election in 2016, SoftBank also donated, or rather invested, $50 billion in the American economy. But this does come a week after Trump announced a new incentive structure for businesses to invest in the United States. If you remember last week, he promised fully expedited approvals and permits for companies investing $1 billion or more in the U.S. So it's possible SoftBank saw that that's a pretty sweet deal, and we're going to invest even more this time around. But all things considered, it's a pretty good deal. I heard Trump's even trying to gun for perhaps $200 billion if possible.
Yeah, and Sam, it seems like, looking at the big picture here, this is just another Trumpian move. If you can call it that, a Trumpian move. He's a businessman. He's a businessman at heart, and he's entering back into the White House once again. This is the kind of economic leadership that I think we need here. This seems to me like it's a private sector move of creating these 100,000 new jobs. These aren't government jobs. Remember, the jobs numbers were a little bit, let's just say they fudged the numbers, the Biden administration did a little bit, because there were so many government jobs that were created. The private sector is really what's going to do it there. So yeah, it's exciting stuff here. And I do hope, Sam, as we're looking at all these things that Trump is pledging to do, I just hope he follows through. You know, I hope that he's able to, and not even for a lack of him being able or having the desire to, but having the team members around him to. I know that's kind of maybe was a little bit of a hiccup for him in his first term. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. But I hope that all these things, we can see them come to fruition for sure. As we're nearing ever closer, folks, we're about a month away from Trump's inauguration for his second term into the White House in 2025. Well, folks, we got more financial issues coming up right after this. I'm excited to invite my friends from Crossroads Kids Club to join me for an interview on the history of this great ministry that we've partnered with. We'll be right back after this break. Stick with us.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
We believe in being faithful stewards of what God has entrusted to us. And nothing is more important than investing in the next generation. The most impactful way to do this is by sharing the message of Jesus with young people. Crossroads Kids Club is an after-school program that brings the gospel to elementary school children in public schools nationwide. Together, we can make a lasting difference for the kingdom. To learn more and join the movement, visit reachourschools.com. Again, that's reachourschools.com.
I found out I was pregnant when I was 21 years old. For me, I was scared, I was shaking. They do an ultrasound, and that's when everything changed. When I saw my baby and when I heard her heartbeat, that was it. We've seen the hand of God ever since we stepped into the pregnancy center.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Well, there's nothing that gets you quite in the Christmas spirit like jazzy Christmas music. I love that. Whoever made the bumper music for our Christmas shows here needs to get some props there. It's pretty awesome.
I don't make it. I just play it.
You just play it, Sam. Yeah, you can take the credit for it, Sam. Well, it's great.
Not?
It's great to be with you all here, folks. Merry Christmas to you. And boy, I'm really excited. You know, we're talking about the light of the gospel this Christmas season, and there's a ministry out there that is bringing the light of the gospel to really one of the darkest places in American culture, which is public schools. Crossroads Kids Club, our newest sponsor here at the ministry, our newest friends here, they mobilize God's people to share the good news of Jesus with children in public schools through church-led, school-based clubs. Folks, I got a great treat for you today. Matt Armstrong, who you've heard from before, Matt is the CEO of Crossroads Kids Club, is on with me this morning, but we have another special guest, Bertsche. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Bern? Bertsche. Bern Bertsche is the founder of Crossroads Kids Club, on with Matt as well. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, sir.
Merry Christmas to you.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas to you guys. And boy, we appreciate what you guys do so much. Folks, listen, so just before we get into this interview, if you want to learn more about Crossroads Kids Club, while we're doing this interview, check them out. ReachOurSchools.com is the place to go. ReachOurSchools.com. You can learn more about what they do. Obviously, you'll learn more about it as we get into this interview. And Bern, I'd love to start with you here, brother. Can you share the story behind the founding of Crossroads Kids Club? What inspired you to start this ministry so many years ago?
Yeah, thanks. I was moving our company into a new location out in an area that had a lot of new buildings. It was an industrial park, and about the time we were moving in, I noticed gang graffiti on some of the walls of buildings close to ours. And that really concerned me because we were moving out of an area where that was very prominent, and I thought I was moving in where we'd really enjoy the peace and quiet of the suburbs. And so once we got in and we saw that there were these issues, I began to talk to our people about what we were going to do about it. And I had kiddingly said something about putting one of our guys up on the roof with a shotgun and just let the neighborhood know we were in town. But turned out there was a local school had a DARE officer, which I'm not even sure what DARE stands for anymore. But this officer came over, not because of my threat, but just had heard about us. And he said, maybe if you started a partnership with one of our local schools, that would endear you to the neighborhood. And so we did. We began with a school called Parkwood, and began to bring the kids over, 5th and 6th graders. Once a week, we'd bust them into the company, and our people would get together with the kids. We'd have one adult with 3 kids, and we did all kinds of things. Built race cars, taught the kids some blueprint reading at whatever level we could, and just got to know the kids. And it was a wonderful time. We had many of our people involved with it. And but over a couple of years of doing that, there happened to be a little girl who was in my group that was a terror at the school, as I found out, and she was something of a terror with us, shorter than anybody else, but had the wits and the gumption to not let anybody get after her. So at any rate, we had a good time through the year, but at Christmas, she brought me a little stuffed animal, which I should have brought this morning. I've still got it. This was 20-some years ago. And it really touched me, and it got me thinking that we need to do more than just have this partnership with the school. We need to find a way to bring Jesus into their lives. And so that spring, we did a spring Bible class at the church across the street, and we had the kids invited, and many of them came. We did some of the Veggie Tales. We had a time where the kids heard the Bible stories, and we had many of our employees come over and work with the kids, but the kids were so excited throughout the week. That opened the door in my mind through God's Spirit that we needed to do more. And it was shortly after that Matt and I started to talk.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's kind of really like my next question for you is, how did you both come together? Matt, you entered that picture at that time. How did that come about?
Well, I was teaching kindergarten in a public school, and I was pretty disillusioned by the setting and the system, the politics and the union and decisions that were not made in the best interest of kids. But more than that, the kids were coming with so many needs that were really just overwhelming, and their greatest need was to know Jesus. And one day I was at home and my phone rang, and a gentleman named Bill Kroll, he was an elder at my church, and he was an engineer in Bern's company. And he just started telling me about what Bern and his company were doing with these kids and how they wanted to share Christ with them, and said, would you be interested in having a conversation? So I said, sure, why not? And so we talked, Bern and I talked a couple of times, and he offered me a summer job. And that summer job has continued for about 26 years now.
Turned into a little more than a summer job, I'd imagine now, right, Matt, as the CEO of the ministry? No, that is absolutely awesome. And that leads to my next question, brothers. Crossroads has grown significantly over the years. Can you guys speak to that for just a minute? How has Crossroads expanded since its early days, and the mission, how has it perhaps changed or remained the same as well? What would you say to that?
Well, I can start. Just initially, we were providing all the volunteers for the clubs, and that eventually stopped by using the churches, bringing the churches into the picture, and allowing them to take a lead with the kids and developing their own volunteers. And that was a big change for us.
Absolutely. Matt, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's a really key shift. In the really the first decade plus, we were very laser focused just on our community where the ministry was born. And our idea was just to saturate every school in our community with the gospel. And we saw the Lord opening great doors. And then in 2011, people were along the way saying, how is it that you're able to get into these schools and share the gospel? And we're like, well, maybe we have an opportunity to help others understand this and get into schools around the nation. And so we pivoted in that direction. And so the way that we do that is by partnering up with local churches.
Yeah,
and,
awesome.
Mobilizing, equipping them, supporting them along the way, and making it really just a turnkey opportunity for them.
Yeah. Speak to this for just a moment, guys. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that Crossroads Kids Club has faced over the years?
I think, some of that was just listening to the Lord, knowing what we should do and what we shouldn't do. I mean, when you start a ministry, you're really not, you don't have a roadmap of what to do. I mean, I knew on the business side what we were doing, who we needed to look for, customers with, all those things that come on a business side. But with us, we were really doing it on our own. And I think that was a lot of, Matt and I did some things that we look back at and shudder. But we got out of those things. I mean, I've always felt like you've got to take risks in life. And we did. And so I think, that was one of the challenges, was understanding what our place was, what the Lord had for us to be doing.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It kind of likens that to if you guys have ever heard about, the founding of our ministry. Our founder, Dan Celia, had that same mindset where he just wasn't afraid to take risks. He wasn't afraid to fail. So it sounds like you guys had that mindset. It sounds like it's paid off really in a tremendous way here as you guys are in those darkest parts of, those public schools reaching children. Let me ask you this. Obviously, you guys probably aren't the only ministry that is trying to reach public school children. Of course, there are a lot of youth pastors out there who are trying to do the same thing. But what separates Crossroads Kids Club from other ministries to reach school-age children? What sets you guys apart?
Yeah, great question. So I think first of all is our connection with local churches. Yeah. Without a local church, there is no Crossroads Kids Club. And so again, we don't go in and lead these clubs directly. We mobilize, equip, train, support local church partners. So every Crossroads club is owned and operated by a local church. Second, we're right inside the schools. There's a number of ministries that try to serve public school children outside of the school. But we're able to be right there on the campus, meeting them in the same classrooms where they're studying math and science and literature. We're there teaching them about Jesus and the gospel. And then I think another key thing is just our values. Our highest value is actually relationships. And so we're not a ministry that's driven by a lot of fancy technology or flashy stuff, but rather like getting adults who love Jesus and who love kids to sit on the floor with a group of kids, to listen to them, to love them. And so I would say the relational emphasis and the simplicity of the model is actually something that makes Crossroads special as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, that's a Christ-like model there, folks. I mean, our Lord himself was an expert at building relationships with people. He had his disciples. He also had other relationships, and it was a one-on-one, boots-to-the-ground ministry. It's amazing there. Kind of my last question for you here, brothers, as we have to close here. What are some of the biggest needs for Crossroads right now, and how can our listeners help support this ministry?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's just a huge opportunity. Yeah. There's tens of thousands of public schools across the nation that do not have a gospel witness.
Yeah.
And we hear news all the time. We see the evidence of it in our communities all across the nation. Kids are hurting. Kids are lonely. There's anxiety on the rise, bullying. There's moral confusion. States like the one where we live, Illinois, are sometimes pushing agendas that are very secular, very antithetical to Jesus's way. And yet we have this opportunity to shine the light of Christ right in the schools. And this is the only way to push back darkness, is to shine the light. So how can we do that together? There's 4 ways. You can say, pray, play, or pay. So I like rhyming things. It helps me remember things. So say, there's a lot of people just don't know this is possible. This is legal in all 50 states and even the District of Columbia. So you know what? Tell somebody that we have an opportunity to reach kids. Spread the word. You can play. We need people who are going to go and sit and listen to kids and open up the Bible with them and share their life and God's word with them. You can pray. Right on our website, there's a little button that says sign up for the newsletter. Go ahead and do that and receive some of the latest news so you can pray. We have an enemy, and it's not just secular forces. We have a spiritual enemy. And you know what? He's seeking to steal and kill and destroy. We know his agenda. Jesus told us, right? But Jesus has come that they might have abundant life. So you know what? We need prayer partners who will stand in the gap.
Amen.
And then finally, pay. This is a show about finances, right? Financial issues. We need financial partners.
Yep.
That's the reality. And what will we do with gifts that come in? We put boots on the ground team members around the country, right?
Yep.
Where's Mima? We found out Shepard's diagnosis when I was about 17 weeks pregnant. We learned that he was going to need a series of surgeries after he was born in order to give him what they considered a normal life. And we weren't sure how this worked.
Yeah, very emotional, very, very broken. And as my wife just said, not sure how this worked. And called Samaritan, and they said, you just go have that baby. You leave the rest to us.
And just to hear the confidence on the other end of the phone of this is not something that you need to be concerned about at all. You focus on the health of your family, the health of your baby, and we will walk with you every step of the way.
I just love the first book of Exodus. The king says, the Jews are too many. Get rid of them. I command you to kill the firstborn. But the midwives to the Hebrews heard the order, and what did they do? They defied it. And God dealt favorably with the midwives and gave them families. He blessed them for loving life. He blessed them for saving babies. We have re-entered the death cult in this country. You think about how much we elevate death, whether it be the chopping off of parts and we call it transgender care, whether it be shouting our abortion, and you see it so beautifully in John 10:10. It is the divide of the entire scriptures. Now, most people would say John 3:16, but think about it. The enemy has come to lie, steal, cheat, and destroy. I have come to give life and life more abundantly. That's the whole ball game, everybody. It is everything. And we have to have the joy of Jesus Christ to enjoy life and to protect it. It's a gift from above. And Preborn is leading the charge.
Pharrell came to Crossroads as a 4th grader. His name had been brought to my attention by the school principal. She was concerned about the direction he was heading.
I remember I wasn't the best kid. I got into trouble a lot.
He became a very active part of Crossroads Kids Club.
Mr. Engel, he was the leader that really impacted my life in so many ways. I honestly didn't want Crossroads to end.
We would invite all the students to come to our youth group here at Waterfront.
I felt God saying, come on, come to me. It felt like I was set free.
And I'll never forget the day when we had the privilege and the honor to baptize Pharrell.
I hugged Mr. Engel. I don't know if he understands. I'm truly, thankful to have him through the whole journey. If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now. I wouldn't be a follower of Christ.
Help reach more kids like Pharrell with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachOurSchools.com.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Hey, folks, wanted to make sure that you knew if you missed that ending there, reachOurSchools.com is the way that you consider that final aspect of what Matt was saying about pay. If you're interested in that, it'd be a great place to go. Of course, your stewardship dollars, your giving is up to you. So we just want to present you the opportunities of places that you can consider deploying some of that money to be honoring to God, to be a faithful steward of it and fund the light. So we appreciate our friends at Crossroads so much. All right, folks, part 2 of retirement coming up right here. This is making the most of your retirement. So I hope this can be a blessing for you. This first clip we have is Shana with a caller just talking about investing during retirement. So it's not that retirement's the finish line. In many ways, it's kind of the start of a whole new chapter there. So here's what Shana Burt had to say with that caller there. Great call here. Here's our host, Shana Burt.
Both my husband and myself are retired from law enforcement, and we are drawing our pensions, and we're not planning on taking our Social Security until, like Dan said, until we're of the age of 67 or older. But my question is, I've never invested in before, and about 1/3 of our money is in Voya, and I'm trying to decide if it's wise to try to take that $120,000 and start investing it in the market. If Social Security remains solvent and we wait until after 67 to start drawing that, I would think that we would be okay for the time being, and we would have about 10 years to have it invested in the market at that point.
Okay,
beginning now.
Do you know what kind of investment that you have with Voya? I know that they sell several things, but they sell a lot of annuities. Do you know if what you have is an annuity? I
have because they were. I think I've got it all in guaranteed interest.
Okay, so is it in like an IRA account right now?
It is. I had called them. I've been listening to Dan for a long time, even though I've not done anything in the past. I had contacted them about asking them to put Timothy Plan on their platform for us to funnel money that way, and they said that because it was a specialized sector, they wouldn't do it. So, well, this has been a long time ago, So when they said that, I quit. Having my deferred comp going into Voya, and I stopped and I started trying to get it to go and doing something different to get some going into Timothy Plan.
That's an interesting answer that I haven't heard before. That's an interesting excuse for not including options that people want. So,
well, and I even suggested, I was trying to get my coworkers. I kept telling them, please contact at the time it was Arkansas Diamond. Please contact them and tell them we would like to have Timothy Plan as one of the options. But I don't know that any of them ever called. But anyway, regardless, So all I know is I took it because the markets were doing crazy, and I know that I needed to take that money and make it safe. I took it all out, and it's in two different interests.
Well, Joy, I'm really glad that you spoke up for your convictions and your faith, and that you encouraged your coworkers to do that. I do believe it's sort of a losing battle because most of Wall Street does not share our convictions, and they just don't get it. But biblically responsible investing is a conviction of the heart. So, I'm really glad that you spoke up and said something because we need to have our voices heard. One of the reasons that corporate America is supporting so much of the garbage that they're supporting right now is because they're hearing from the other side, and they're hearing from the other side very loudly and proudly, and we need to be a voice as well. So kudos to you for doing that. So with that being said, is if they won't listen to what you want, at the end of the day, it's the money that you've been given to steward, and you have to follow your convictions. So if they don't have an opportunity for you to invest it biblically responsibly, which most of the options out there don't, because they just don't screen. So it's interesting that they call it, what did they call it? a specialty?
They call it, like I said, this has been probably 10 years or so ago. They called it a specialized sector or something like that.
Oh, okay. I see.
It's indicating to me that they didn't think there would be a lot of interest in it. I don't know. I just, like I said, I'm not a financial person. I just know that we've been trying to save, and I can tell you that the money that we have of that is in VALIC fixed account and in Nationwide fixed with Voya. That's the only things I can tell you. And we, like I said, my husband and I are both now retired, so this is. This is money that we need to try and keep safe, but we're not utilizing it right now, and it's earning 7.744% interest.
Oh, okay. 0.74?
That's for my last quarter. That's what it was.
Okay.
For the year to date, it was 1.46.
Yeah. So what I would suggest is that you consider opening a discount brokerage account, one that will allow you to buy the Timothy funds. And then, you said you've been a partner for a long time. So take a look at our asset allocation models. We've got two. One is kind of where you build your own portfolio using the buy list. The other one is where you just use, the funds and the ETFs for a more hands-off approach. And then what I would suggest is go to that portfolio tracker on your partnership page and just mock build out a portfolio. Just see if you can do it. Put in your money, put in the 120,000 or whatever you have as cash, and then look at the output, and then pretend like you're going to build your portfolio over the next 6 months. What would you buy in the first month? What would you buy in the second month? Just walk through the exercise. It doesn't, there's no real life consequences for if you make a mistake or you get stuck somewhere. That's going to help you really determine whether or not you feel comfortable, building it out on your own. So I would say walk through that exercise and then consider doing it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking my call. I just want to acknowledge Dan for, I know he's gone to be with the Lord, but like I said, I listened to him for a long time. We were partners, but we've never done anything else with it. And we even had the privilege of working with him and Yvonne at the AFR Share-a-thons. So,
wonderful.
Very cool.
So we've been around a long time.
Great to hear that call there from Joy, folks. All right, quickly, we're going to get to one more clip. Shana with another caller about placing cash in retirement. Here's Shana Burt with some great insight for this caller.
I have $1 million in cash, maybe a little bit more. I have other assets, but that's strictly cash. And I'm 80 years old. What would you recommend I do with this cash, other keep it in CDs?
Well, it all depends on what your goals are. So if the goal is just to preserve it and pass it on to heirs, whether those heirs be people heirs or kingdom heirs, then you're probably good just doing what you're doing. You can get a little bit of interest off of some CDs and some fixed income type things and just rock along. If you need more income than that, or, maybe let's say that you have some kingdom goals for whenever you go home to be with the Lord. One of my favorite things to talk about is estate planning because, we don't know how many days that we have left. We know that the Lord is faithful to take care of us for all of our days, but we also believe that the Lord owns everything. So I believe it's good wisdom to ask the Lord, what do you want me to do with what you've trusted me with, not only while I'm alive to be a good steward and to take care of those under my roof and do the things that you've asked me to do, but what do you want me to do with this stuff when I don't need it anymore? So, this sounds a little bit like maybe like some never money that you might have. So, you want to think about that. If you have some charitable wishes when you go home to be with the Lord, you can consider some planned giving things like maybe setting up a family foundation, maybe setting up a charitable remainder trust where you're going to be able to get some income from that money as long as you're alive, and if you have a spouse, as long as they are alive. And then you can direct that money to
to kingdom work beyond that. If you want to see it grow, then you want to start adding some equity exposure. I would look at, if you're going to consider doing that, make sure that you just have the risk appetite to do so. I would look at the income model. Unless you just really don't need the income, then you could look at maybe the 65 model.
The 65 model, I've taken care of all that stuff you're talking about. If I kick the bucket now, the money's all accounted for. My kids need nothing. They've all done exceptionally well. I just want this money to last until I may not need it, or if something happens to me, my wife would have it. But I have no risk for the market.
Yeah. So then I would just stick with, if you don't have the risk tolerance for being in equities that can go up and down in value, then I would just stick to the CDs, maybe some treasuries or some things like that. Maybe look at some municipal bonds. I don't know what your income looks like, but that may be a way to get a little bit more interest. The inflation protected securities, now you can only buy $10,000 a year of that per person, but they've been paying a pretty decent rate. Is inflation, national debt, and volatility in the markets causing you anxiety? Well, you're not alone. I'm Shana Bern, host of Financial Issues, a nationally syndicated, biblically based program. During our daily program, we help you navigate the current financial climate and provide valuable insight so that you can be a good steward with the money that God has blessed you with. The Bible tells us not to worry and to seek wise counsel, and that's why Financial Issues is here.
Join our partnership community by visiting financialissues.org/join.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. And on top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support Preborn. The donations that you give actually make a difference. Last year, 59,000 babies were saved because of what you have done with your generosity.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Kids all across the nation are facing challenges such as isolation and loneliness and bullying, but there's still hope and the love of Jesus, and we want to bring that to those kids.
Today, Crossroads has 6 focus regions across the country. We are committed to adding 5 more regional coordinators, reaching more kids than ever before, but we can't do it without you.
God is doing something new, and we can see it in the lives of kids across America. Children are finding hope and belonging and community and purpose in the love of Jesus. The gospel is going into schools, and we need your help. We are trusting God to raise $200,000 of new funding. This funding will allow us to have 5 additional focus regions, as well as a team member who will oversee all of our regions. Please join us for this Drive for 5 in 2025. Let's place 5 new team members in cities around the nation and watch what God will do.
To help spread the love of Jesus to children across the country, go to crossroadskidsclub.com/5 in 2025.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hey, folks, I hope you all enjoyed that insight, wisdom from Shana Bern. By the way, she'll be back live tomorrow, so looking forward to having Shana on tomorrow. I hope you'll get your calls queued up and ready at 9:05 Eastern Time. It's the best time to call at 610-363-1110. So it should be a good time tomorrow. Sam Case, my good friend, very kindly reminded me that this article we're about to talk about parents, it's Gen X parents. Okay, it's not Gen Z parents. Gen Z parents, there's not that many of them, first of all, because they're young, and many of them are foregoing parenting.
Seth, you never acknowledge your mistake.
I know. I'm not supposed to do that, but I couldn't help. I didn't want to be deceitful. We're going to get to that in just a second. So we'll talk about that headline. But before we do, 2 things. Number 1, the markets just opened about 20 minutes ago, and all in negative territory as they were pricing in. So possibly seeing a losing day today. The Dow is down 0.4%, S&P 500 down 0.5%, NASDAQ down 0.5% as well. Can't help but wonder if NVIDIA is having something to do with that. And we also, of course, mentioned the looming Fed report coming out tomorrow. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. The second thing that I wanted to say is in the chat, I'm seeing some delightful comments about folks' theories about the drones that are happening. Not far from us, actually, right here. They're happening in the New Jersey area, so about an hour away. But we've even had some staff members who have been able to see some drone-like things in the sky. I'd love to get your theory on what is going on here and what these things exactly are. It's probably our government, my guess, and they're probably doing something, I don't know if it's nefarious, but they're doing it in secret, and they're trying to make it seem like it's not a big deal. I also have a theory that it could be demons masquerading as aliens, as they often tend to do, in my opinion.
As long as you don't say they actually are aliens,
exactly.
I'm cool with it.
Right, exactly. So that's just my thoughts, Sam. I don't know if you have any opinions on that.
It's definitely the government, right? It's got to be.
Yeah.
Considering how much they've come out and talked about it without saying what it is, so it's got to be the government, right?
Absolutely. Now think about this though too. If you've got a ruling elite government class that are also Satan worshipers, and most of them are pedophiles too, it's kind of influenced by demons anyway. Kind of secondhand influence. So just consider that. But at any rate, I am very excited to have a fresh start in 2025. Let's just leave it there. And so certainly, listen, folks, in all seriousness, let's be praying for the Biden administration on their way out, that they can finish well, and pray for the Trump administration also, that they can start well too. The transition of power, it's always really a kind of an odd, in a really amazing way, thing that the United States has been able to do somewhat well over the years, to be able to peacefully transition power like this. It's been a little bit concerning these last couple of election cycles because it's been so divisive, but certainly a good thing to be praying for here, definitely. All right, Sam, let's get to this headline we've been waiting for here. So Gen X parents. Very interesting. Gen X, again, not Gen Z, Gen X. If you're relatively 45 to 60 years old or so, between the boomers and millennials, what do we got, Sam?
Well, Gen X is nervous, dreadfully nervous, to quote Edgar Allan Poe. According to this new survey here, over half, 53% of Gen X worry that their children might need financial support well into adulthood. That's according to a new U.S. bank survey, as reported by CNBC. Now, as I said, that's 53% of Gen X parents, and that's significantly higher than other parents. Just 37% of other generations feel the same way about their kids. Now, according to experts from U.S. Bank, as reported by CNBC, they say there's a couple reasons for this anxiety, as Gen X has experienced, in their words, quote, less than ideal economic conditions. For example, 4 of the 5 largest stock market crashes in history occurred in their lifetimes. They were among the first generation to mainly utilize 401k plans for retirement rather than pensions, as their parents and grandparents had done. Gen X is also the first generation to be actively questioning whether Social Security and Medicare will be available for them in a meaningful way by the time they reach retirement. So it's not like that their anxieties are completely unfounded. The question is, what are they going to do with these anxieties? So let's take a look at what that is. A survey from savings.com found that parents, to clarify here, I'm not sure if this is just Gen X parents or if this is parents across the board, but American parents are giving their kids close to $1,400 a month on average. This is adult kids. They're giving their adult children $1,400 a month on average. For Gen Z children, parents are giving over $1,500 a month on average. So what do you make of that, Seth?
My goodness, there's a lot to make of that.
I wish I was getting that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for the record, I think it's okay, Sam, for you and I to say I don't think we've received that type of help from our parents who are kind of around
adult
that
allowance.
age. Yeah, it's exactly right. I should say though that we were talking about this yesterday. We have received help from our parents financially, just out of simple acts of generosity, and it's been a wonderful gift, of course, for sure. Megan's grandparents have been very generous also. There's a lot to think about this though, Sam. First of all, I think generationally, you're exactly exactly right. And I think the article's spot on about the differences between the generations. My perception of this in looking upwards and seeing Gen X and then the boomers and then the greatest generation, or the silent generation, I think was between them and then the greatest generation, is Gen X kind of seems to be that first generation that kind of participated a little bit in like the sort of softer parenting.
Oh, like helicopter parenting,
a little bit of that. And now I do think you could make an argument that some young boomers did that too, but it seems like Gen X was really kind of the ones who started to do that. I'm not sure exactly why they were the ones to do it, other than, these were folks who grew up in the chaos of the 70s and the 80s. These were also folks who were young adults, relatively speaking, when 9/11 happened. There's a lot of cause for perhaps a little extra doses of timidity and fear in their lives. They had Y2K, all that stuff. So I can't help but wonder if that's maybe part of it there, Sam. It gets to the question, though, of if you have adult children, how helpful is it to basically give them these big financial gifts and say, hey, you need help from me, I've got all this money? Because on one hand, you can make the argument that's wonderfully generous. Yeah. And you're helping someone out who's young, they're trying to start a family. On the other hand, the question then becomes, is it enabling? Does it end up being not as helpful? And Sam, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, maybe as someone who has been, in a much lesser way, a recipient of that. Was it helpful from your parents to receive that? Or was it almost more like they were keeping the training wheels on? How did that go?
You kind of have to give yourself a little bit of a humility check when you receive these things, because it's true, you're 30 years old, and if, your car breaks down or something, your parents might want to chip in, and there's part of you that's saying, like, I'm a man, doggone it, I don't need help from my parents, right. But you need to also recognize it for the grace that it is, that I've been so blessed by God to have parents who do love me, that have a stable enough financial situation that they can help me in situations like that. It's not like I actually needed their help. I would have been able to pay for those things on my own, but it's basically an act of love on their part, and I need to be able to accept those things. So that's one way to look at it. If you do have parents who want to help you, view that as a blessing, but also don't let it infantilize you as an adult, I guess, to make bad decisions and say, well, mommy and daddy are just going to chip in. So that's always the danger, right? So we live in America where we believe in pull yourself up by the bootstraps, rugged individualism. I'm the only one who's going to help myself. And, personal responsibility is a wonderful thing, but also we need to remember that there is also something to community and family and accepting help and giving help to others, that's not always a bad thing either. So I think it just depends if you go too far in either direction.
Absolutely. And, Sam, it brings up a point we talk about often on the show, is about legacy giving, about leaving a legacy for your family. That's a form of financial help. Now, we don't always think about it that way, because it's a gift when you pass. It's usually much larger than just several $100s or a couple $1,000, or so. But it's that same idea too. And I think you're exactly right. The heart behind it is what matters most. So if you're a parent in your 60s, you've got an adult child, and you just want to bless that child. You're not trying to enable bad behavior, but you're just saying, look, I've been in your shoes before. I've been a parent where money was tight. I had young kids. We had to figure out how to pay for things. Take this as a gift, no strings attached. This is a gift from me. I think that's a wonderful thing to do. I think at the same time, also as a parent, perhaps the most loving thing for you to do is to say, I am not going to give my adult son or daughter a financial gift, because that is enabling. Maybe they're partaking in some bad habits that they shouldn't be partaking in, and they need to learn a lesson or two. Sam, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about recently is I really am of the mindset of, I would love to be in a place where someday I could be in a spot where Megan and I could say, you know what, we're ready to take in one of our parents. If, say, one of the spouse passes away or something like that. I think that's right. There's a natural good order to that, where sooner or later it switches. Sooner or later, adult children grow up to a point where they can say, Mom and Dad, I can take care of you if something happens. If one of you passes away and the other one needs a place to stay, so you don't have to go into an old folks home. We have a house that's big enough. We have that savings built up. I think that's a really good thing. And I'm not saying that everybody can do that. I'll say this, mine and Megan's house right now, technically we could do it, but it'd be very tight. We have a small house, So I think there's all those aspects to think about with it. But folks, it all comes back to acting like Christ and having a mindset of being a good steward with what you have. And so if you're in that position where you can bless adult children with a financial gift and there's no strings attached to it and it's not feeding some kind of nasty habit, by all means do it to the glory of God, as God has done so graciously for us. If you're in the situation where you need to withhold that and you need to say, you know what, I can give this person $2,000 or $3,000 to bail them out, but maybe it's better for them to learn a lesson on their own. Maybe that would be the godly thing to do. So interesting conversation. Sam, I appreciate you sharing your experience there and bringing it up. And some of you on the chat, I see those comments there as well. It's great to see all of those and to hear your wisdom with many Gen Z parents in the chat as well. God bless you all. Boy, it was a great show today. Shana will be live tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. I know you are as well. Until then, remember, it's all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with the money that God has given to us. We'll see you next time on Financial Issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.